Welcome to Groove with Portia, the podcast that uncovers the hidden treasures within grief. I'm your host, Portia the producer, and I'm inviting you to join me on a transformative journey where we will exchange laughter, of course the best medicine of them all, reflect on cherished memories. Remember that time that the little boy grabbed my hand instead of his mother's at the amusement park? Yikes. And of course discover gratitude while navigating one of life's hardest challenges, loss. So get ready to groove with me, Portia the producer. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Groove with Portia. I am your host, Portia Booker, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep with the latest and greatest of all with Groove with Portia. So a couple weeks ago, I was going back through some old pictures, and I found one of my dad. And it brought back a memory of when I went to see a therapist who told me that I had been grieving the relationship that I never had with my dad because him and my mom divorced when I was young. And I had to sit with that for a minute. That memory came up and I said, wow, I wonder how many individuals today started grieving even before they experienced the physical transition of whether it was a parent, a pet, a friend, whatever it might be. So today I am joined by a lovely individual who I had the honor of meeting through a mutual connection. Shout out to Mr. Dave Roberts for the introduction. She is not only a grief and trauma healing expert, an author, and also a Reiki master and teacher, and also a good friend of mine. So welcome, Miss Claire M. Schwartz to Groove with Portia. How are you today, Claire?
I am very well, Miss Portia. It's so good to see you.
I know I'm around like a donut somewhere. I'm not a figment of your imagination.
That's good.
I have to tell people that people used to ask me if Portia was my real name. And I'm like, yes, it is. I didn't pull it out of her magic hat today. I'm not in Alice in Wonderland. So it is my real name.
It's also a Shakespeare character.
Indeed. The Merchant of Venice. And also, I believe, Brutus's wife, too.
There you go.
And if you're a fan of True Blood, Portia is also Andy Belfleur's cousin. So,
well, there you go.
I can go on
I'll
and
go
on
with
about.
Shakespeare.
I like the Shakespeare because I think that's where my great grandmother pulled my name from when I was little. Because my mom was going to name me something different other than Portia, and my great grandmother was like, "We're not having that." So when Nanny put her foot down, everybody obeyed. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. Claire, for starters, what are you grateful for today?
I am grateful for coffee.
I had my cup too.
The fact that my house has heat because it is chilly outside. Yeah. Grateful for friendship. I'm going to go with that. Friendship and connection, right? Priceless.
I feel that. I mean, because in the world that we live in today, there's a lot of disingenuine people out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I'll just say, unaligned individuals that are predators, right?
Yes,
and we have to be mindful of who comes into our circle, right? Whether it's through social media channels, even through mutual connections, right?
You bet.
You have to kind of put those, Jedi boundaries up, like, no. But
no is a complete sentence. That's right.
Indeed. And we forget about that. Claire, when I was reading your website, one of the things that really stood out, and as I brought up in the beginning, was that grief before a physical transition, right? And you were grieving the childhood, the life that you didn't have, even before losing your parents.
That's
and I'm curious, Claire, how do you think that grief from your childhood compounded when you experienced the physical transition of your mom?
It's a great question. And, I was quite young in the grand scheme of things when my mother passed. I was 24, 25, and I didn't know anybody around me of my age who had lost a parent yet. So I had no framework for how to process that. I had to ask my older friends, what? And my mom and I had been estranged for a couple of years. We had a very difficult time when I was growing up, and that's a whole long story. Some of that's in my book. Some of that I've sort of discovered since. But yeah, it was always, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? When I hadn't had a lot of my healing myself yet. That didn't happen for many years down the road. And it actually was one of my biggest heartbreaks that night, because I got a phone call at midnight from my uncle. And because she was just found in her house. And so there was no, long illness. There was no preparation. There was none of that. It was just boom, gone. And the first thing I had to do was call my dad. They were divorced at the time. And what flew out of my mouth, just, because you're not really thinking and planning when you're in that state of mind, because I had instant meltdown. And what flew out of my mouth was, Mom is gone and we didn't fix anything. That's what flew from my gut. And that was just, you lose the possibilities of healing. You lose, and I hadn't framed it yet at that age, but of course she missed, really. I've now spent more time on this earth without her than I did with her. So, because it's 30 years that she's gone, so she missed this whole second half and more of my life. She didn't know who I would grow into. She didn't know my career path. She didn't know my friends. She obviously would never meet my husband. So, but the irony is that that loss was so profound in the shaping of who I am. It made me work really hard at the healing piece and who I am, and 17 other things that happened in my journey. But the irony is, if I hadn't had that loss, I don't know who I would be now. Would I have had that healing? Would I have had all of the lessons, which again, ironically, I feel like I would be able to offer a great deal of support and insight and wisdom to her in who I am now, but I wouldn't probably be who I am now if I hadn't lost her. So it's one of those conundrums that life brings us, right? It's our traumas and our losses shape who we are. I say it in the end of my book. Loss changes you. And sometimes we fight those changes and we go, I want those times back. Can't go back, obviously, but who we get shaped into from our healing path it can have a huge impact afterwards. And so we don't really know. It's part of one of the most powerful things that I do in my practice is, okay, these very difficult, sometimes really horrible things happen in our lives. And how do we craft who we are going forward? And so that's really the task. And part of that is understanding that there are some things that we can't get back. But I encourage people to not soak in that, because yes, it's a truth, but I also always talk about there are two truths very often, and one does not have to cancel out the other. So yes, you can't go back. That is true. I can't get that person back for you. I can't get that time period back for you. But this is not the end of your story. This is a chapter. This is a piece of the puzzle. So, and the overall picture in the puzzle is constantly changing. It's not like the thing that's in the box that is the preset thing. It's constantly changing, right? So, who are we after we've lost our parents? And it's a profound question, and just dealing with that right now in my practice. And I have a client who just lost her dad last week, and trying to keep people grounded and figure out, who are we now and how do we build on that.
Well, and Claire, first of all, I appreciate the vulnerability and honesty, right? Of that you and your mom weren't close. And I
No,
mean, that already is a grief in itself of why can't I build this relationship with you that I
because
see? Right.
because we had a history. Our household was not um, this cookie cutter holiday card warm fuzzy place. It was
Right. The
not.
Hallmark. It wasn't
Yeah,
Hallmark.
yeah. I'm gonna be careful with copyright, so I don't use that word. But but yes, I mean it's not that, the commercial thing that we see, this idealized wonderful thing, because more often than not there are houses with abuse and neglect and all sorts of sad and unfortunate things. That's the rule, not the exception. Most families have that in some aspect, and so our house was not warm and comfortable and supportive. It was very fraught and dangerous, and so yeah, so that was, I wasn't really close, I would say, to either of my parents, and desperate to get out of the house. But the again, another irony, as I got older and into my 30s and 40s, and you know, I'm her kid. If you look at pictures of her when she was in her 20s and 30s, I have occasionally I've posted a picture of my mom in her youth, and had somebody just look quickly and say, "Oh, that's a great picture of you. Oh, wait, is that you? No, oh, wait, that's not you." I'm like, "No, that's mama." And but I'm also, we were more alike than we ever realized. I'm her kid.
Mm.
Um, we just didn't really get to talk about it. It's a she had a tragic story, um, and complicated, lumpy. I talk about in my practice, as someone passes, leave a lumpy legacy. It's not everything was sunshine and roses. It's, oh no, actually these things were really hard, and there were other things that were terrible, and there were other things where I'm pretty angry, and all of that is acceptable when you're going through the grief process. So some folks, both my folks left a lumpy legacy, and but it's just layers of irony, right? And things that we understand as we get older that we didn't understand when we were, youngins.
Young,
So
wild, and free. 20
yeah,
fun. 20 fun. You
yeah,
know, Claire,
20
it's
trouble.
20, true. Mine was 20 fun. It might have been some little dangerous pieces in there. My mom used to say all the time, I want to be young and dangerous. So my mom always said that a lot. And it's
Oh, there's
interesting,
a,
Claire.
yeah, dangerous. Yeah, you don't want to be doing that in New York City. I'm like, oh wait, I did do that. Oops. Yeah.
You know, Claire, it's interesting you bring up about how our parents have their own grief stories and journeys
Yes.
that we're not privy to. And
Yeah.
that has shaped how they parented us, how they showed up in the
You
world.
bet.
I mean, it's amazing the things that I found out after both of my parents transitioned that really
Same.
made me, take a step back and be like, wow, I see why they
Yes.
showed up
Yes.
in the world this way.
You bet.
And
You
I'm
bet.
curious, Claire, so many people today
Yeah.
are estranged from their parents because of similar situations like you.
Yeah.
And some of them, their parents are still here,
Yeah.
but yet a lot of them are struggling still in that boat of the woulda, coulda, shouldas,
Yeah.
the guilt. Some may be resentful,
Right.
right? And I'm curious, Claire, what words of encouragement can you share with these individuals today to help
Mm.
them to still live life to the fullest, right? Understand that circumstances happen and it's not their fault, but also give them that peace of mind that, yeah, this person birthed me, but their scars don't have to, stay on me like a
Yes.
scarlet letter.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, the topic of estrangement is very tricky. It's right up there with forgiveness. Very, very dicey stuff because sometimes mending is not possible.
Right.
And so there are these blanket platitudes of, oh, you should always forgive. Oh, you should always make up. Oh, you should always like, well, maybe it's very idealized, and it's a big if, right? Because and I had this with my father. I'm actually again watching this happen in my practice, um, where we tried to mend, we tried to get into a healthy place, but our perspectives and understandings were just too different. And what one person requires to have the relationship run well may not align or be healthy for the other person. So sometimes it's not always a bad idea to just distance yourself from somebody because you how many times are you going to bang your head against that wall? The wall doesn't move and you're the one who's getting bloody. So in a lovely world, sometimes people do come together and they have these, enlightenment moments where they can look face to face and go, oh my God, I had no idea. I'm so sorry I did that. Tell me what I need to do to fix that. How can I make that up to you? How can I fix our broken relationship? I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. Sometimes it doesn't, right? So I'm always careful not to use these blanket assumptions about individual, very complex relationships. Um, so each person has to decide, where is your boundary of healthy? What does healthy
Mm-hmm.
mean to you? Right. So if you are trying to mend something and the other person is not listening and not getting it, sometimes you just have to take a deep breath and take a step back and go, okay, so this is how it is right now. And you set whatever boundaries you need to stay in a healthy mindset for yourself. Um, and so if that person passes before you can mend things, all of that has to be processed through. It's whether it's sad or whether it's angry. I was very angry at my dad when he passed. It's like he just could not get out of the way so that we could connect, or he just could not take better care of himself because he didn't understand the consequences that that would have for me. Um, so and yet there are good facets and there were really destructive facets to relationships with both of them, um, and with my stepmother, by the way. um, Sometimes I miss her more than I miss either of my parents, and we didn't get a chance to really connect either for completely different reasons. So the best I can leave you with is, take each of these relationships as a separate story and be able to be gentle with yourself in the process. We all have elements of shoulda, coulda, woulda, if only, uh, so common, so common. And at some point, what we what is possible is to be gentle with ourselves. People only know what they know at any given point. You can't beat yourself up for something that you should have known 10 years ago. Well, that
Right.
was 10 years ago. You didn't know. That's okay. We're human, we're messy, we're imperfect. And most of us are doing the best we can. Sometimes the best we can is inadequate. But in terms of ourselves, grace, giving ourselves grace and going, okay, this is another chapter in the story, right? And the next piece of that is, what can I learn from that going forward? How do I want to change how I connect, how I listen, how I receive, how I set those healthy boundaries for myself, and also ask of others to do the same. So it's such an individual story, but after 15 years of doing the grief work, really my observation is it takes time to work through all of those things. And I always encourage people, allow all of the feelings. Don't beat yourself up for any of it. And that folks need a space where they can just bring those things out, talk about them, and have them processed until at some point they just release. And then
Mhm.
you are able to take a deep breath and go to the next phase of your life and try to get as much joy out of it as you can.
Well, I'm glad, Claire, you also reminded us of taking each loss individually because
You
when
bet.
it's, compounded, that's a whole nother ball game and a half. When you've
You
had
bet. You
multiples in a
bet.
short period of time, my parents went 9 months after each other. So that was a
Yeah, I
whole,
know.
chaos town 2.0 in my house, but
Yeah.
it was honestly, when I think on it now, I'm very grateful that it happened that way, where it wasn't,
Mm,
my mom goes and then 10 years later, my dad, right? I get to
yeah.
work with both of those losses simultaneously and also
Mm,
grieve the different parts of both relationships that I did and did not have.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
Claire,
Yeah.
we are going to be wrapping up, my friend.
That was
And we're
quick.
gonna probably have to do a part two
You
because
bet.
there's
Anytime.
there's something else that I definitely want us to touch on because I know that you also work with different organizations and corporations to incorporate a more grief inclusive workforce, right? And we'll have to do a whole episode on that because so many people, right? Grief is causing so much loss in revenue in companies and they don't even realize it,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So Claire,
Yes.
for our audience, I'm sure that there's going to be individuals who want to connect with you, who want to also get your book, Putting Out the Fire. How can they connect with you, Claire?
So the my website, my main website is youcanhealyourgrief.com, which I'm sure Miss Portia will put in the show notes. And that's where you can find my book, which I'll just see if the camera can capture this, Putting Out the Fire, Nurturing Mind, Body, and Spirit in the First Week of Loss and Beyond. That's for that, the book that I wish I had in the beginning, right after my mom passed, where here you have to make 87 really important decisions in the next 5 minutes when you're completely numb and in shock. And how do you navigate that? All of those moving pieces, whether it's dealing with family, dealing with the legal bits, dealing with the funeral, and what happens after all of that is done. How do you move forward? So it's a nice, thin, easily digestible book. And it is on my website. It is also on Amazon, but I always ask that you buy directly from the author. Um, so I would appreciate that. I work with individual clients, as well as doing work with, as you said, businesses and organizations to help with grief and trauma, actually, how to have a trauma-informed approach to when things happen to your employees. Um, and also I have an intensive program for people who want something much more personal. You want your personal grief coach in your back pocket on the daily. You can have that. I have a 3-month online portal program that I call Fearless Grieving to Fearless Living. And it's not just for grief, it can be for trauma as well, for really when you want to really pedal to the metal. Some people need that. I want that right now. I can't deal with this anymore. I need more intensive support than once a week. So I only take a couple of folks a time in that because it is a very personalized connection. And so these are the things that we want to get out of the way. The grief and trauma that walks around unhealed in your life can do a lot of damage, and it keeps us from living our lives. And we want, if we do have, you alluded to before, generational trauma, things that here's why we got this way is because the stuff that our parents went through and because they didn't have these tools and these conversations back then. let's have those conversations now and have that stop with this generation, that we be the change makers, creating the healing that is needed in the world so that we can put forward something healthier and more grounded and more connected for our friends and family to get the most out of this life. Not one day is promised. Let's go do the things.
In that order, Claire, in that order.
You
Well,
bet.
everybody, if you want to connect with Claire, obviously you can go to her website. You can healyourgrief.com or just do a Google search of Claire's name. That's always what I tell people because, you know, Google is your friend. Well, everybody, that was Claire M. Schwartz that you heard from today on Grew Up Portia. And that concludes another episode. And until next time, everybody, peace and hair grease, everyone.